Hey, you guys, we are so excited about this month's conversation. So get on in here this evening because you are not going to want to miss what we have for you. Hey, do me a favor as you are watching and you know that there is someone who needs to be here for this dynamic conversation tonight. Go ahead and send them a text message on your phone right now and say, hey, man, you got to get on the Children's Ministry Moving Forward page because tonight we have none other than Reggie Joyner, CEO of Orange, with us tonight. And I am super excited that he is here. Hey, Reggie, where's Kristen?
She is the president of the organization. So she is, in my mind, my boss in the sense that she's taking care of all of the issues related to budget right now as we're getting ready to do some changes and things. So she is in the middle of a lot of conversations, and she was going to try to get here. And I know the conversation won't be nearly as smart, but you just stuck with me. I mean, I thought it's just me. I don't even know how to apologize.
So you've heard it. You've heard it here today. Reggie is just the pretty face behind everything.
No. I feel like, Kristen has this unique role in our org. She is a thought leader and she is a strategist. I mean, she's both of those two things. And I think because of a lot of the transitions and transitioning to her leadership and role, she carries it with a really heavy responsibility. And so she's just in the middle of all that right now. And I hope soon you'll get, yeah.
Kristen, we love you. We love you wherever you are with all of these documents piled on top of you. We want you to know that we love you this evening. We are celebrating. We have moved from Black History Month to Women's History Month.
Yeah.
So we are celebrating dynamic leaders like Kristen this evening, who is just a powerhouse in ministry and a mother of 3 children. So we know we are celebrating her, but Reggie, we are so excited that you are here.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
We are super pumped. Hey, if you guys don't know, Reggie has just been such an amazing voice and mentor to me during one of the most difficult seasons where I just saw just so much division in the church that just absolutely 100% broke my heart. Reggie, I don't know if you know this. You were like that North Star that said, hey, it's okay to have all of the feels. It's okay for your heart to be broken. It is okay to have these feelings. Your feelings are legitimate. And let's just work and move forward to see what we can do to heal. I am just so grateful. So please know this evening we have wisdom I'm not saying that in age, Reggie. I'm saying that in terms of.
No, it's okay. I was kind of confused by your mentor statement because I thought you were mentoring me. And because one of my rules is that old people need to have mentors that are a lot younger. So I think I tricked you into thinking I was mentoring you, but you were really mentoring me. So I think that's how it worked.
Reggie, actually, if you meet Reggie in person, he actually looks really young. I just want to say that. I told God that the other day. I said, man, Reggie looks really young. Not like I thought you were like 100 or anything, but.
Oh, no, sure. 100. Well, let's jump. Yeah, well, it depends. If you measured ministry years, I'm probably about 150. I mean, because ministry years count for more than 1 year. We all know that.
It just ages you. It's like being the president. It just ages you. But hey, Reggie, for those who are watching, obviously we have a children's ministry audience here. Hey, you guys, go ahead and let us know where you are from. We know we get people all over the country. I'm always surprised as I go through the conversation and I'm like, oh my goodness, Bangladesh is here. Oh my goodness, South Africa is here. Go ahead and let us know where you are from. I want you to know that we are so excited that you are joining us this evening for this conversation. Reggie, I want you to let people know. I know there are so many people who know who you are, but for those who may not know who you are, let us know just a little bit about you.
Well, I started in youth ministry when I was 19. So for the first decade of my life, I worked with teenagers and then, started having children. And I remember when I was a youth pastor, I was pretty much an expert on how to raise kids. And then I had kids, and I changed my message on 10 ways to raise godly kids to 100 things you might want to try. Because, I realized I didn't know as much as I thought I knew until the kids showed up.
Yep.
The next decade of my life, I worked with families and kind of in a range of everyone from, parents who worked with kids that were young to youth ministry to kids ministry. And I oversaw all the ministries. And then when we started North Point, that was my one request, that I could actually oversee from cradle what I would consider to be to college, so that we could have an integrated team that was thinking in terms of not just one phase, but all the phases together. So other than that, this is really the only thing I've ever done. I don't claim any expertise. I just have lived this in a space that I love. And I think if I were to wave a magic wand, I would still figure out how to do something like this, regardless of what age I am, because I believe in the people that are working on the front lines with kids and teenagers. I don't think there is a more important job on the planet than those who show up every day or every week to interact and engage kids for the sake of their faith and the sake of their future. So, yeah.
I love it. I love it. We are so excited that you were here. If you were watching tonight, CEO Reggie Joiner of Orange. Reggie, I love how you talked about this integrated strategy, because I think sometimes when people think of Orange, they think of a curriculum. And I'm like, Orange is not a curriculum. Orange is a movement. It is where the light of the church and the heart of the home come together and join forces to impact the world for Christ. So I am just super excited. We're going to kind of jump into this. Reggie, I want to talk about children's ministries, because our audience are children's ministry leaders, children's ministry volunteers, children's ministry workers, children's ministry, everything is our audience here this evening. So let's talk about the significant role, in your opinion, the significant role that children's ministries have had on the global church. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I would say that there's a statement that we say a lot around our staff. It's the sooner you make deposits, the greater the return will be later. And I think when we've created preschool spaces around the country, we put up the phrase, "The future starts here," because we believe that you can actually change the future by how you interact with preschoolers, young elementary age kids. And as you think about leading them into a robust and dynamic faith, you're setting them up for adulthood in a unique way. So, I would say there's nothing more important than that job and the role that's happening. And as we look at the volunteers and the leaders that show up for children, we like to say this is a strategy. We love to work with probably 70 different denominations around the country that all will gather together in spaces in cities or in our national conference because they have something in common. And there's, how that is. There's something magical when everyone in the room has just a few things they're sharing. They believe in the gospel. They believe in investing in the next generation of kids and teenagers. Yeah. And to get into one room and one space together, there is just something that starts happening because you have this common bond. And we need, I think, more than ever before to be in those spaces together, because we need to be reminded why this matters. In a world that's more polarized than ever, in a culture that is wrestling with, how do we help a generation and even a generation of parents who are beginning to get disillusioned with the church? How do we recast a vision and a version of the church and what it means to follow Jesus in a way that recaptures their imagination into the power, I think, of a gospel that really does give hope? I think we love to talk about this one issue. Why is the good news good news? Yeah. Because sometimes I think with all the bad news that happens around us, we have this unique opportunity, even in this dark moment, to lean in and go, oh yeah, but there's good news, and here's the good news, and here's why the good news is the good news. And I think more than ever before, we have the opportunity to be a light as we look forward in the next 5 years and 10 years. And that's why I love your book, Children's Ministry in Crisis, because I feel like we have to turn the volume back up on children's ministry and student ministry, youth ministry, and not let it get turned down, because I think the days are more critical than ever.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Reggie, part of the reason that I wrote that book, you could just feel this spirit of weariness, you know, in
Mhm.
children's ministry. Obviously, you know, we've had multiple conversations on just so many things that were going on in the country. I mean, you got racial unrest, political mudslinging. I mean, and the cherry on top was really a global pandemic. I mean, no big deal. I mean,
Mhm.
just
Mhm.
very light things that were happening in the country. But I really want to go there when it comes to the pandemic. I had so many leaders reach out to me, Esther. We are trying to rebuild. We are trying to reinvent and restore. We've just been so hit by this
Mhm.
pandemic. So we know that the pandemic just seemed to disrupt
Yeah.
everything. So I want to talk to you. For you at Orange, I mean, along obviously with thousands of ministry
Mhm.
leaders across the country, what's your view on ministry after the pandemic? What speak to us on that?
Oh yeah, I love that you refer back to just what in some ways was a disruption, but in other ways I think it was the potential awakening that we needed in the
Mm-hmm.
church. Because if we're really honest, if you look at stats and data, the church was losing influence going into the pandemic, and the pandemic just simply accelerated or exposed something that was already in many ways broken and need to be
Mm-hmm.
adjusted, and we needed to think about how we were doing ministry on the front lines. And it gave us a chance, I think, to reset. It gave us a chance to reimagine. It gave us a chance to move Jesus back to the center, because in the
Yeah.
conversations that I think are happening all around us, it's interesting how easily we're distracted from what really is the main issue. And I agree with what you said about people being exhausted. Everywhere
Yeah.
around me, when we start talking to leaders and individuals who show up in these spaces like at conference or tour, the first thing that we're impressed with is how everyone is so tired. And about 2 years ago, we started using the phrase "see you tomorrow"
Yeah.
as simply a way to lean into each other and say, I'm still going to be here tomorrow. We're still going to be here tomorrow. We're still going to be having this conversation. Even though we might disagree about this issue, guess what? We serve a God who's promised us that he will be
Mm,
here tomorrow, and a Jesus who promised us that the church will be here tomorrow. So how do we lean in and just remind each other, as difficult or as complicated as this gets, we're
yeah.
still going to be here tomorrow? Now, that is for the church with a capital C. I would
Yeah.
have to be honest and say that there will be some churches that, if they don't rethink, how they engage with
Mhm.
communities, and they don't rethink or reimagine, how they present a timeless message to a generation,
Yeah.
there may be some churches that aren't here tomorrow. But
Yeah.
that doesn't mean the church,
Yeah.
big church, isn't going to be here. And as long as we're a part of that, we get to be on the winning side of something that I think Jesus has promised us, that is going to be a very, very powerful moment. What we love to say at Orange, and I think this is definitely as we think about the next gen or the next decade, is that when Jesus said, you know, on this rock I'll build my church,
Mm,
and the gates of hell will not prevail against it, he was acknowledging something that I think we all need to realize, and that is that evil has a strategy.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
guess what? I have a strategy. Evil has a strategy, and here's my strategy, and it's called the church. And if evil has a strategy, why isn't that more
Mm,
important for us to have a strategy as it relates to the church, so that we're not just jumping into these spaces and just doing something? We actually are going into these spaces with a plan, which is,
yeah.
again, why I love children's ministry in crisis, because I think you're helping leaders who are trying to figure out how to reset, know some baselines that they need to get to, because we do need a strategy. And all a strategy is a plan of action, a plan of action, so with an end in mind, so that we're actually
Yeah.
moving down a road together. We love to talk about that, because when we can get everyone around the same values working
Yeah.
together, we feel like we can make a different kind of impact. So
Yeah.
looking forward to the next decade, we've just got to continue to wrestle with what does it mean to have the right plan, and to put it in place, and to work that together, because we can do more together as multiple churches than we could ever do as an individual church. So there's a principle there too. But yeah, anyway,
Absolutely. Reggie,
I
I
think the
love how
future.
you're talking about how you really go into strategy. You know, I think sometimes we over spiritualize things and we forget that we serve a strategic God and we need
Yeah.
to have a strategy. I'm going to tell you guys, I got through Family Ministry Essentials today, an Orange Strategy Guide. One of my favorite things, Reggie, I have to tell you about this book. I just sat there until I was done. I read it from the beginning all the way to the end in the library. And it was so funny. I love it because a lot of us, and I say this to you all this evening, a lot of us say, hey, I have orange, or I don't have orange, I don't do orange curriculum. And I love how you point out a lot of us think orange. We just don't realize it. So I'm gonna tell you this evening, obviously, I think orange. I'm reading through this and I'm loving this. I know I should be advertising my book right now, but this one was so good. I could not put it down. Absolutely amazing. Reggie, I know that the pandemic obviously, you know, kind of showed us some challenges. It kind of birthed some new challenges for so many ministries across the country. But for our audience as children's ministry leaders, and I know you guys can attest to this tonight, we've always had challenges, you know, in children's ministry. In this current hour that we are in right now, what would you say are some of those challenges you think that children's ministries are facing?
I think one of the biggest challenges, and I wish we at some point could just talk about this in detail, but I think one of the biggest challenges is a trust crisis. I think that when you have the things that have happened in the last 2 or 3 years, and you have the polarization of different sides of issues, there's a sense in which trust erodes. And the church has lost a lot of people that have walked away from the church.
Yeah.
Some just decided, you know, because of medical and health reasons, they couldn't participate in the church for a season of time. And then when it was time to come back, I think they were just second guessing, you know, what is the role of the church in our life? And then for other leaders and parents, I think there are good reasons why, for whatever reason, trust has been broken and they've walked away. I don't think that's a reflection of their perception of God. I think they actually want to be connected with communities of faith. I think they're just trying to now figure out, okay, where do I re-engage and what does that look like? And I think churches, because of the way sometimes we've entered into the rhetoric, we have actually maybe accelerated some of the mistrust because we don't trust each other. I say this sometimes. I tend not to trust politicians because they don't seem to trust each other. And I wish sometimes if they would sit at a table and work on the solutions together across party lines, then maybe we could all have a different level of trust. I think that's why it's more important than ever that we lean into parents. One of the things that Kristen Ivy did that was a research project that I love was she did a research going into this last conference that was called What Parents Aren't Telling Us. And all it was a research project to find out what non-Christian parents and what Christian parents are all struggling with and why we need to understand, you know, what it looks like to help them win. If all we're doing is trying to help them help us win as a church by participating in our programs and our programs aren't really helping them win, they can see right through that. But when we actually have empathy with every parent, and we're talking about parents who've been divorced, we're talking about parents who are raising foster kids, we're talking about parents who represent, you know, the traditional family, all over this range. If we don't understand what their real issues are and what they're wrestling with, and we can't serve them to help them win, then I'm not sure we're going to build the bridge back. So there's the issue of parents losing trust. Then there's the issue of volunteers losing trust. I think we have a brand new opportunity to help volunteers re-engage in a different way to our ministries if we will re-engage with volunteers in a personal way. You allude to this a little bit in children's ministry in crisis, but if we don't start imagining as staff members what it looks like to serve the volunteers we're asking to serve us in our ministries in a new way, I don't know that we're going to turn the volume back up on what our ministries need to look like. So I think it's a trust issue. I would have to go back. There's so many aspects of that on what it looks like to rebuild trust, before we can reimagine how we do programming in a way that I think we can invite them to. It starts with the trust issue. So
Absolutely. Reggie, we just be on the same page, man. I'm just tell you, I'm just let you know if you don't know, we be on the same page. We actually had Guy and I had an event at Kids Matter MegaCon conference, and I actually brought him on stage to talk about this trust issue. And
Good.
I had a baton, a track baton, and he was trying to get it. He was the next person in line. He's trying to get it, but I won't let it go because I just don't trust you. So I'm loving it. I think that is so important. How can we restore this trust that has been lost and that has been broken? In children's ministry and crisis, Reggie, I talk about so many things, from leadership, training, and burnout. What do you think about these particular issues in children's ministry? What's your view on these? Is this an issue at all, or is it just, it's not a big deal?
Yeah, I think there's so many issues related to exhaustion, burnout, mental health. And this is another thing that I think is connected to what we said about trust. There's a generation that needs to feel like they're safe.
Yeah.
And they can bring their stuff into these spaces and places. And they can know that, number one, as church leaders, we see it, that they are seen, even with our volunteers or each other. I mean, we've got to recognize that there's a safe place that we need to create for each other so that we're seen and we're understood and we're listened to. And then also that the church should yield to experts who are better at explaining this and dealing with this than maybe the church was ever intended to be. Somehow we have made the experts sometimes the enemy, or we've acted like we are the experts in space that we aren't. I would say to any children's pastor and any student pastor, youth pastor, the worst thing in the world you can do is try to be an expert in this space. The worst thing you can also do is to ignore it as if it doesn't exist. I do read a lot of social media. I go in and out of those spaces, and sometimes I'll write a blog or post that my staff will not allow me to send because I'm trying to respond in ways that they're saying, just don't get into that. Don't get into that conflict. But I saw a post one day that said, we don't need to be trauma informed. We only need to be biblically informed. Well, that sounds good. It sounds like it would be an amen kind of statement. But when you really unpack it, let's just be honest. I believe everything in the Bible is true, but the Bible doesn't tell us everything we need to know. Those are two different issues. And we need to be people that are informed about trauma. We need to be people that are informed about mental health. And you're not going to find a verse for every one of those issues, but you will find people that God created that have done their homework, that are smart individuals because they're made in the image of God, that have amazing insights into what it looks like to enter into this space and to make a difference. But going forward in the next decade, we cannot ignore those issues within ourselves or within the people we're trying to serve. It's going to be very important.
Reggie, I love that. I mean, and some of my story, with us moving to Alabama, and even with our son, in the school system that he's in, and a lot of the challenges he's faced. And I love it that Guy and I get to be at Orange this year. And we get to, obviously, I'm excited. We get to talk about designing effective children's ministries. That is absolutely my passion, training children's ministry leaders. But we also get to talk about race and how important it is, to acknowledge this. And I think we get so uncomfortable having conversations about this. So I'm excited to really kind of tear that wall down and have us come and talk about this important topic in light of the truth, and the grace of the gospel of Jesus Christ. As a children's pastor, even here, and it wasn't until, my son actually got in a situation in the schools where he was not playing at all on the playground. We didn't know what was going on. He was crying every day, only to find out he was the only African American in his grade. Only to find out that there were some kids who told him brown kids aren't allowed to play on the playground. And he believed it. And I remember as a mom, it was so devastating. Obviously, this was in the midst of the global pandemic as kids are kind of getting back into school, but we were still very much in the midst of it. Racial unrest, political mudslinging, and I remember my heart was just broken. But then I remember my call as a children's pastor, and I thought about, what about the other Gideons that are sitting in spaces where they don't represent the majority and how they may be feeling? Just talking about, just kind of, yes, we're all about Jesus. We love the Lord. Is there more? Should we be directing the conversation, obviously with Christ as the foundation, but should we really be digging into other issues that are relevant and taking that and the gospel and merging them together to really help our kids understand, to help that child who may be sitting in the back, who may be feeling a certain way, and we don't even realize it. And Reggie, I'll tell you, we have gone from a space to now we do represent the majority. And I will tell you, I am overprotective. Let me tell you something. A little white boy came in, he was new, and I was a mama bear over that little boy. I'm like, oh no, this is gonna be your best Sunday experience on the planet. Because you kind of recognize it almost as a special need and how important it is for us to be so intentional. So I'm not going to bore you because I've had just amazing conversations.
I absolutely love these conversations. And, you know, you and I have had some long conversations in the last couple of years where you would text or I would text and say, hey, can we talk? Because as we're sorting out what this means and what this looks like for leaders around the country to come together, we have an opportunity. And I think it's a window of time, but I think we have an opportunity as the church to rise above the rhetoric, to rise above the labels, to rise above the things that dismiss this conversation, to go, no. We have to continue to do the hard work with each other to build bridges. And what does that look like? And what does that mean? And you said something a while ago about you and Guy doing this, workshop at conference. And part of the reason I love that is because I've listened to the two of you talk about what this means and why this is important in this space. And you said a word a while ago I would love to just put on the table, because it's the word uncomfortable. If we can't get uncomfortable, we never change. And I think there is something about some of us sometimes that we don't want to go into the uncomfortable conversations or the uncomfortable spaces because we're afraid there might be something we see about ourselves or something we see that we need to work on or something we see that needs to, transition into a different kind of way of seeing the world. And I think that, Dr. King was very careful to say over and over and over again, oh yeah, I'm supposed to make people uncomfortable because they won't see this unless we're willing to see this. And I think the thing that I love about the Christian space is I really do believe in this space, we can do something unique that the rest of the world can't do because we're connected by a gospel where Jesus was born on this planet as God's son to reconcile people, humans, to a relationship with God. And there is this reconciliation thread that cuts through the entire gospel. And because we are who we are as people of God, we should be the first ones to have these conversations and to lean into each other and to go, how do we reconcile those issues and those things so that we can again build a bridge and demonstrate to everyone who's watching us what it looks like to be a follower of Jesus. And there's so much conversation we can have about this, but I know that what you and Guy are going to do will be amazing. I've seen the notes and I just love being around those conversations with the two of you, because I think we just need to hear over and over and over again. For me, I'm a 62-year-old white guy. I lived through the 60s, 70s. I've lived through the 60s, 70s, 80s. I mean, I was there, I was 5 years old when I remember my mom first explaining to me a little bit about, people of color that we were friends with. And so I remember learning, what it looked like and what it meant to actually build relationships with friends, because I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, that were people of color. And then I remember looking back at all those years and thinking, but I never really realized that there was another narrative and another story going on in the stories of those lives that I had never really dug into and understood.
Yeah.
And I think for the last 20 years, it's just been kind of this amazing opportunity for me to see God in a bigger way.
Yeah.
I think, and I don't even know how to explain this, but at this stage and phase of my life, God is bigger than he has ever seemed in my life. Jesus is more real
Wow.
than he's ever seemed in my life. The world is clearer than it's ever seemed in my life. And most of the reason for that is because of the diversity of people that are around me, and seeing the gospel and having them wrestle with those issues and teaching me what they've taught me. And so I would just invite anybody who's listening to this to go, hey, if you're in an echo chamber, if you're in a denomination, what you can learn about God from other followers of Jesus who believe in the gospel, but are different than you, will be amazing if you'll just invite yourself into those spaces. TD Jakes told me one day, he said, the problem with this issue is that Black people think white people don't want to come to the party, and white people don't think they're invited. So I would say to anyone who's listening to this, if you're a white leader, you should start inviting yourself to the party, because you're missing out on a party you don't want to miss out on.
Wow.
And God will get bigger if you just take that dare and step into that space. So
absolutely.
Anyway.
I love it. I love it. Me and Reggie could talk about this all day.
We really could.
I love it. I love it. So many layers. Reggie, tell us, what is your greatest joy with working with Orange? This has been your baby, for years. What is it? What is your greatest joy?
I think my greatest joy is learning from younger leaders. I think my greatest joy is in creative spaces and brainstorming and imagining what we can change, and listening to younger leaders show me what the world is looking like and what they think the world is going to be like. And I love the creative process. I mean, I think I'm wired as a creative. The opposite of my greatest joy would be a spreadsheet, or working with budgets, and which is why I feel really bad.
Sorry, Kristen.
Kristen can be here, and she, I promise you, that is not her greatest joy either. And so I think that's probably the thing that gives me energy the most.
Yeah.
I think when I get to go on the front lines and work with kids and teenagers still, I mean, that's always hardwired in me. I love being in those spaces and doing that. Seeing lights turn on when someone walks up to us at a tour stop or at a conference, and we think this is a compliment, and they say, hey, I've been thinking what you were saying for a decade, which means we're not really teaching anything new, but you said it in a way that will help me say it better. I think, okay, then we've done the hard work of wrestling with it and handing it to you so you can continue to reimagine how to cast vision. And I think that's what we love to do. We love to wrestle with words. We are content and experience creators. And so that's kind of what we do for every age and every phase, including leaders and volunteers. But I love what you said a while ago when you said we want everyone to think orange. We think if you are someone who influences those who influence the next generation, you are thinking orange. And you can call it purple. You can use whatever color you want. We love to engage with people who are really giving their life and making an investment in that space. So yeah.
Reggie, I love how you talked about investment. I want to go there. Talk to us about how important it is to make an investment, to be excellent in how you do ministry. I know for so many of us, we have churches, and most churches aren't big mega churches. They aren't huge churches with huge budgets. How important is it to make that investment, whether it be in buying curriculum, whether it be in really preparing your leaders for that curriculum, or whatever it is? We know there's so many amazing things that Orange offers that you guys do. Talk to us about that, because this is, you might be uncomfortable while you're watching this evening. Oh, I'm getting uncomfortable. We talking about investing. Relax, okay? But talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably go to what I would consider to be the ultimate goal. And then everything else you're doing, it really comes down to this one thing. whether it's an experience you're creating on a Sunday morning, whether it is, the quality of your presentation. We think that it all boils down to a simple concept, which is kids and youth need someone who will show up for them and with them on the front lines. There is a physical proximity that happens when you have rearranged your calendar and you step into a space and you see a kid and they know they're seen. And when they have someone in their life as a guide, as they navigate the ups and downs, the issues they're going to navigate besides their parents. We say two things all the time. One is, no one can have the influence that a parent can have. And then the opposite side of that is a parent is not the only influence a child needs. And by parent, we mean anyone who's in the guardian role. And by, a parent is not enough. He's not the only influence a child needs. We're talking about the volunteer who sits in the circle with the kids because they are on the front lines with those kids. And we think there are two things that happen there. One is what happens in the heart of the adult who volunteers or the adult who sits with the kids or works with the youth is as important as what happens in the heart of the kids and the youth. I mean, we say this to churches all the time. If you want to measure the health of your church, measure the health of the volunteers who are working on the front lines with kids and youth, because that will determine and signal so many things. So our job as staff members, and about 60% of our churches are under 100 in attendance that we work with around the country. Our job as a staff is to lean into those leaders who are influencing volunteers to remind them that the future of your church really is connected to the volunteers who show up on the front lines with kids and teenagers. How relevant you are, how motivated you are, how people give, how you reach the community around your church, how you build a baseline so that kids can actually feel like there's someone in their corner advocating for them. All of that comes back to this simple volunteer on the front lines with kids and teenagers. So we have to start there and then back up and ask ourselves the question, how is everything else we're doing a step to make that successful? Because if we can win in that moment, doesn't matter how big our church is. It doesn't matter how slick our programming is. It doesn't even matter if you don't use our curriculum. What matters is there is someone connected to that kid who can be connected to that family, who can help the parent engage. I mean, it's kind of the baseline for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I love you're talking, and I'm thinking of so many things from It's Personal. As you're talking, a dynamic book. If you don't have it, y'all got like 50,000 books. I mean, I'm just be advertising all types of books. Definitely make sure you get Children's Ministry in Crisis. But so many things. I love all of this. Listen, Reggie, I want to ask you, because I think a lot of us. I think when I think of orange, I think of wow. I'll confess, I didn't know how big orange was. My first orange was last year. And I'm like, I'm going to go to my room and I'm going to look over my notes, make sure I'm good. And I go on social media and I'm like, I see all these posts and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is huge. I told Mike Clear, we had a conversation recently and I got to share with him how it was my first experience at being somewhere that was so big, yet still so personal. Just the opportunity to make those connections. It was so amazing. So you would think you would make friends because, it's so much going on. But the relationships and the friendships that started in that place was absolutely incredible. So you guys definitely need to get to Orange this year. We are April 26th, right? April 26th, 27th, right, yeah, 28th, Orange. You got to get there. Reggie, I'm going to tell you. So we had a virtual book release party. And I'm going to tell you, it got kind of ugly because we were giving away free Orange tickets. And I almost got my eyeball scratched out. There was a woman who won. This is I'm speaking really bad about myself. Don't kick me out of Orange this year. But there was a woman who actually won, but you had to be present to be there. So we're like, make sure you talk to us online so we can see you're there. And for some reason, there was like this disconnect with my connection. Maybe because all the kids were online at the same time. And this woman is like, I'm here. And we're like, you are not here. And I literally take the sheet of paper and rip her name. We finally found out she was there, and she almost got in a car accident because of this thing that I did, because she was so excited to be at Orange. She was willing to get a car accident to make sure we knew she was there. But absolutely amazing.
I remember last year, your session, we last year it was an interesting year because they were doing construction in the arena. This year we're excited that all the construction is done and all these spaces and rooms, are kind of brand new. It's going to be so much fun. But I remember a line outside the door trying to get into your room. And I broke some rules because I was like, no, you guys just come in and stand along the walls, and I could have gotten in a lot of trouble. But it was a great session, great reviews. I mean, you got raving reviews from the Orange, fans and the people who showed up there. So thanks for doing that.
Oh, absolutely love it. Reggie, Orange, you guys always have this wow factor. And before we get out of here, I really want to kind of hit this wow factor. How do you guys continuously, and I know you're humble and you might be like, wow factor. No, listen, Orange is wow. If you are here this evening, you already know Orange is wow. How do you guys continue to create and reinvent and keep this wow factor going year after year with Orange? Tell us about that.
Well, I think it's because we all own our own inspiration in the sense that we are constantly learners. Our organization is a learning organization, and we know that we don't just learn from talking heads. We don't just learn from presentations. And I don't know, I think in the creative process, this sounds really, kind of personal when I kind of lean into this. We argue a lot. I mean, we have some pretty intense debates on ideas and what works better and who will go where and what song we'll use there and how it all connects. And it's not that we're trying to wow in the sense of just, make an impression so that people will really just be amazed. What we really want to show, I think, is the fact that if we're working on the front lines with kids or teenagers, and we believe we're made in the image of God, and the kids and teenagers are made in the image of God, then we should be the most creative people on the planet. I mean, we should be the first ones to show up and go, let's leverage our creativity to show a generation that God is the God who actually created us, and we have this thing that we can lean into. And so we love to learn. And we love to learn from people who disagree. We love to learn from people, some who aren't even Christians, because we feel like it's important for us to actually lean into what we need to know. I love the definition of humility or intellectual humility that says it's simply knowing what you don't know so that we can be a generation of learners. The stakes are too high for us as kids leaders and as youth leaders not to do our homework and not to be as creative as we can possibly be. So I think we just love creativity. Our staff is made up of educators, creatives, producers, I think musicians and writers. And so we're always living in those spaces to go, what does it look like to reimagine how we can see this truth in a way maybe we've never seen it before, so that it will stick in a new kind of generation's world and life. So
absolutely, I love it. I love it. You guys, family. I should be doing this at the same time, shouldn't I? I love what you're saying about how you guys argue. I love it because I think you constantly emphasize in here, like, we don't all have it together. We grow by coming together. It's a think tank. We come together and sometimes we disagree, and that's okay. So listen, you guys, if you don't have this, make sure that you get. This is not about Orange curriculum. I mean, I mean, it might be an advertisement in the back, but it is literally about a movement, about how we should be thinking about the gospel of Jesus Christ. So definitely something that every leader needs to have. Make sure, Reggie, thank you so much Hey, forward, Reggie Joyner, Children's Ministry in Crisis. You know, I'm gonna like use your name like until the wheels fall off, but super
I
excited.
use your name too, so yeah, that's right.
Super excited to do that project. Make sure you get that. Reggie, leave us with some last words of encouragement for the children's ministry leader who has it's Tuesday. We just labored on Sunday. And maybe some of us are getting ready for midweek programming. Leave us for some last words of encouragement.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that sometimes if you're working on the front lines with kids or teenagers, you need someone who's doing what you do to lean in and to remind you why it matters. And I do think that if you're listening to this, maybe the best thing you could do right now is to remind someone else who you know is doing what you do on why it matters. I mean, you need encouragement. We need each other. I was reading the text this morning about carrying one another's burdens. And I think if that's ever been true at a point in our history and lives as leaders in ministry, it's more true now than ever.
Yeah.
That you're all carrying unique burdens in your spaces and your ministries. And you also could be the encouragement to someone else who's doing what you do. So let's carry these burdens together, because none of us were meant to carry this alone. I mean, we just weren't. We weren't wired that way. We weren't designed that way. We were designed to carry it with each other. So my encouragement to you would be to encourage someone else in the way you would want them to encourage you, so that the work that needs to be done on the front lines with kids and teenagers can keep happening in a way that points them and moves Jesus to the center, so they can understand that even if they're disillusioned with the church, even if they're disillusioned with someone who's treated them wrong, who's a Christian, that they need to draw a line of distinction between that activity and who Jesus really is. Because in the context of the gospel, God did something in his sovereignty that was just amazing. And that's the story of the incarnation, where God became a person, a human, so that everything we feel, every emotion, every difficulty, every piece of pain, every part of trauma, he not only is here to say he loves us in that, but he has experienced it and he understands it. So whatever it is you're going through, why don't you look at that as an opportunity to lean into somebody else and encourage them in the way you want to be encouraged? Because this is important work.
Absolutely. Love it. Reggie, thank you so much. We know that you are busy over there with so many different events that you're getting ready for, from the Orange Conference and every other amazing thing that you guys are offering. Thank you so much for spending time with us this evening and just for pouring so much of your wisdom, your youthful wisdom on us this evening.
Thank you, Esther.
We are so grateful. You guys, thank you for hanging out with us tonight. I know that you got so much from Reggie this evening to just fill your tank up to the brim. I loved it, Reggie. Make sure you encourage someone else with whatever you're going through. Make sure you take that and encourage those who are around you, because we need each other. You guys know that we are here every third Tuesday. We got here early, Reggie. Me and you got here early. This is actually like the first Tuesday of the month. Well, typically we're here every third Tuesday of the month. So we will be back next month. Make sure that you guys are here, and we will see you guys next time. Thank you, Reggie. You're absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
Guys.